G'day punters. What, how and why? Welcome to another episode. I'm kennym. These are my epic adventures. Let's get to the what. Brake caliper kits. Front ones, rear ones. Genuine Toyota for the old 79. About 9 years old, 300,000 Ks almost on the clock. Time to do a bit of preventative maintenance. That's what the what is. A little bit of the why as well. These kits cost about 260 bucks from Toyota. Some silicone grease for the slides, some brake clean, some degreaser if I need it, and a shitload of .4 brake fluid. Why? I've already alluded to this, preventative maintenance. Cruiser's coming up to 9 years old and it's just shy of 300,000 Ks. The calipers haven't been kitted out or rebuilt in that whole time. Got some jack stands, going to jack the car up, put it on 4 jack stands, take the wheels off. That's the first part. Bunch of tools for that. Come back to you then at that stage. Don't need to release the handbrake because I'm taking the calipers off. Talk about the tools I need to pull the caliper off. Tools. Breaker bar. Short extension, 17mm socket. That's for the caliper mounting bolts. Ratchet. Once I've broken those caliper mounting bolts, I use the ratchet. Wire brush to help cleaning up. Might need the screwdriver to just lever the disc pads off the disc, so compress the pistons a bit, so I get the caliper off. 14mm, that's for the brake line, so I can take the brake or the flexible brake line off the caliper. 10mm, that's for, well, let's talk about the 8mm, that's easy, that's a dust plate. I'll show you the anti-rattle plate on the caliper. These 2 nuts here, one there, and that's for the bleed nipple on the caliper. I've already taken the rubber boot off that as well, just so I can bleed the brakes. And I'll probably crack that now and bleed them into a bucket to start off with. That dripping here is the brake fluid coming out. I'm just taking bleed nipples out both sides. I'll give you a look. The one on the left there is from the left rear caliper, and the one on the right is from the right rear caliper. You can see a difference in the finish, I suppose. The left hand one looks like it's had water and there's a bit of corrosion. Currently 3:13, you can see that, the 18th of August. That's in the afternoon. Oh, son-in-law, call him soon. I'm not in a hurry to do this, so I'm just going to let it drip out for the next couple of hours and I'll come back and see if it's finished. When it's finished, I'm going to take those calipers off. All I've got to do is take off the flexible brake lines each side and the 2 17mm mounting bolts, and I'll come back to you then, eh? Thought I'd bring you in a little bit closer. It stopped dripping. I don't know why. I wouldn't have thought that the mast was empty, but anyhow, it stopped dripping. That's the bleed nipple hole there. Spanner 14mm hooked up to the flexible brake line, and I've got the socket on one of the 17mm mounting bolts. First thing I'm going to do, as I say, is take off the flexible brake line. Expect some more brake fluid to come out of that. Copper washer each side of the banjo fitting. There's replacements in the caliper kits, so once the brake line comes off, hopefully it'll drip down into the bucket. If there's any dripping, then one bolt there, and there's another bolt a bit further down, 17mm. Left rear caliper off now. There was a little bit of fluid still inside the piston cylinder there. I had some new anti-rattle clips put in recently, so those things there, and I've got new disc pads in there, or reasonably new disc pads. So I'm not going to muck around with those too much, just put them aside. They just push out. Make sure you don't stick greasy fingers all over them. I've got some, as you know, I've got some brake clean anyhow. Not too worried about whether one pad was inside or one was outside, because they're interchangeable. Though, see, this has a wear indicator. Once the material wears down, that'll rub on the disc, cause a squealing sound, give an indication there's no this pad's left. That was the inside pad. So I will take note of that, eh? Well, I'll take this up to my workbench and we'll pull it apart. Now when I disassemble these, I don't want to mix up the parts like the caliper itself. So that's the right rear. One little punch mark there, one little punch mark there. Left rear, two little punch marks there. Two little punch marks there. When I pull the front off, I'll do the same. I'll do the right hand side with one and the left hand side with two. Anti-rattle clips. Important thing about those, got to make sure that when they're installed that they go in this way so they're not inside with the pads, because that'll actually rub up against the disc otherwise, and you get this horrible screaming sound if you go in the wrong way. If you can imagine it goes, if you go, I'll show you, I'll put it in, I'll show you. So you put it in this way, you can see it pushes in. That'd be running on the disc. So you got to make sure that they're actually in the right way. Left hand rear caliper, 17mm slide bolts. Here's a practical tip. Before you take them off the axle diff, crack the slide bolts, 17mm. But if you look at this, these are the slide bolts. They've had a Loctite on it. You see some blue, so they'll go back on with the Loctite. Two parts of the caliper now, inside and outside. I think these rubber boots go all the way through. Okay, just be aware, one side of the caliper has a full length boot, and the other one just has a boot that goes on the outside there and a little cap on that side. Just pulling out the piston seal now. Easier if the piston was out a bit further. I need some compressed air for that. That's back of the truck. So what I'm going to do is just go back and pump some compressed air in there, put a rag in here, just in case it pops out really fast. Pull that piston out and we'll have a look, eh? Have the piston out. Sit there. That goes straight into the sonic bath. Give it a good clean. A seal inside here. Pull that out. It's pretty easy, I think. We'll have a look at it. Pull it out. It's just a square section ring. What I'm going to do now with all these parts is I'm going to give them a good wash in some petrol. Yeah, that's what I'm going to wash them in, petrol. Give them a brush with the wire brush, and I think they're small enough that they'll fit in my sonic bath as well, so I'll give them a sonic bath clean. When it's all clean, these are both clean, I'll come back to you and we'll talk about reassembly. Yeah, I can hear you already. Water. What the hell am I doing with water? Well, I washed all these components with petrol solvent. There's a little bit of grease residue in there, so I've sprayed them with some grease degreaser, and now I've just rinsed them off. Now I'm going to go down there and blow them all out, and then I'll stick the parts in a sonic bath, which will get rid of it. But after I've done that, I'm actually going to stick them in the oven at about, I don't know, 60 degrees, just to bake them off, just to make sure I get all the water out. Yeah, I've got the brake parts in there, just warming up, 70 degrees. Probably put them in there for about 20 minutes, pull them out. Back into it, reassembly. Pulled the kit apart. This is the front kit part number there. Actually comes with some rubber grease, and this sheet of paper is just a warning about washing your hands after exposing yourself to that grease. So what I've done this morning is I've made sure all the threads are nice and clean. That had Loctite on it. The mounting bolts. Didn't worry about the banjo fitting, so it was nice and clean. I've gone through some of the bits in with a little wire brush to clean up around the top of the piston. It's come up pretty good, and made sure the internal bores not pitted, corroded, damaged. There's a little bit of a shiny spot on one side, I'm not too worried about that. Where there was a little bit of surface rust, I just went in there with a bit of P1000, wet and dry, and then I've cleaned everything up with brake clean. I take it back up to the Landcruiser, because that's where my compressed air is, and give this all a good blowout, especially this internal stuff. and the piston and the banjo fitting. I'll also give those slides a good flush out with brake clean as well, because they need to be really clean. And then we'll get into reassembly. These slides, now you recall that there's two different types of boots, a long one and a short one with a little cap on the end. Now the short one with the little cap on the end is this side here, which fits neatly inside the caliper. I've put some rubber grease on that, and I've just made sure I run inside the internal surface there to get some grease into it. The other side has this long boot, so the slide actually sits inside the boot. So all I'm going to do is just going to put some rubber grease on that slide, just for surface protection more than anything else. And that's probably the only place we need rubber grease. Put the slide bolts in just loosely into the thread. So both of them got rubber grease on. Piston, I've put the seal on that. Pay particular attention about the way you put it in. Have a look at the old one and have a look at the new one and install it. I haven't put the internal piston seal in yet. I'm going to put some rubber grease on that as well and stick that inside the caliper before sticking the piston in, of course. Rubber boots, I've stuck those in there. There's a small end and a large end. The large end goes into the caliper slide. I've put the plug on that end, and I haven't put the cap on the other end yet, and that end. So I'm just going to start assembling it. Just something I noticed with this kit, it didn't come with new washers for the banjo fitting. So make sure you keep the washers for the front caliper. Got that internal seal in now. Before you put this all back together, you've got to stick your piston in, otherwise it will be too late and you'll need to pull it all apart again, okay? So the piston's all ready. So I've greased up the seal inside there with a little bit of that grease that came with the kit. And we'll just try and wiggle it in, eh? Piston went in reasonably easy. Now this seal here needs to be pushed back in. There's a little cutout inside this housing, so it needs to be pushed back into that to be located properly. Just going to use a little flat edge screwdriver and take my time and push it in just by going something akin this. Okay. Putting that boot into there was a little bit trickier than I thought. What I ended up doing is taking the boot out of the caliper housing, sliding the piston over it, sitting it at the bottom end of the piston, so piston's down here, locating the piston and then pushing the seal in into this housing. And then I pushed the piston back into the housing and located the top part of that seal around the piston. Not much left to do on this one. Put the brakes back in, the pads, put the bleed nipple back in, and mount them up. Don't think you need to see that. You see me pull it apart, so it's just the reverse of what I've done. So that's the rear caliper. Front brakes now. Just crack the bleed nipple, 10mm. Banjo fitting for the brake line, 14mm. Bit of wind around if you haven't noticed. Got to take these little pins out here. This anti-rattle plate and that spring retainer. Now that spring retainer actually holds those pins in. It's just a matter of... That's it. Those pins should come out. There's the anti-rattle plate. Once you get this other pin out. Now I can get the pads out. That's a pad there, a pad there. They're going to be up pretty tight against the caliper. And see the little relief there. And that's what I do. And that's just squeezing the pistons back in a bit, so we can get the hopefully get the pads out. Need two hands. Rightio, that one's just about to come out. This one needs a bit more help. Inside one has a a wear indicator on it as well, just on this edge here. So just to pull that caliper off now, 14mm for the banjo, 2 17mm, and we'll have the caliper off. Both the calipers are off now. I've actually degreased them with the degreaser and then pressure cleaned them. See, they're just sitting out in the sun here. I'll use the air compressor to dry them off a bit. Got the rear kits and some silicone grease here, so we'll go through that and have a look shortly. Not too dissimilar from the rear caliper kits. That's the part number there in case you're interested. Piston boots, a couple of rings to hold the boots on in place. I'll show you those when we pull the old ones off. Rubber grease that comes with, internal seal for the piston. This actually comes with the banjo washers, which is good, and some bleeder nipple covers. Left front caliper, that's the inside. You can see the seals there. Best condition, are they? The outside one's fine. I don't know about the right hand side. It's looking good. Preventative maintenance, that's what it's all about. Those little metal rings I was talking about, these things. Right here, see that? Right there. There's one there. See where the split is? It's at the bottom of the caliper. So just note to self. You can see they're coming off pretty easy. Now the pistons, got to get them out. Note to self, note where the pistons go. Caliper that way, the mounting flange. Pistons, pistons. I'll have a closer look inside the bore shortly in the sun. You can get these out a bit easier. Screwdriver, just leverage them up into that little bit there. These actually came out a lot easier than the rear ones. I use compressed air for those. Anyhow, I'm going to give them a bit of a clean up now, and we'll have a look at those bores. Well, this piston has a little bit of a wear mark. You can just see it around there, I think. And if you look inside the bore there, just the bottom, the outside side of that seal, it's a little bit rusty as well. So I'm just going to get some wet and dry onto that, clean it up, and I'll do the same with the bore there as well. To show you that piston again, just rubbed it with some that P1000 I've got, a little bit of a mark there. I'll give that a second go. But otherwise looking pretty good. Gave all those bores a bit of a rub up. Have a look, eh? All looking pretty good. Rightio. Put the pistons back in with the seals. A little bit of rubber grease. Put that one back together and put it back on the cruiser. Some of you would say, what about those dirty grubby hands? Yeah, I've just washed them. Alright, and I've brake cleaned those, and I've brake cleaned the pistons, and I've flushed it out with the air, compressed air. Haven't done that one, the bleed nipple, so I should do that. Okay, I've got two of the pistons in its boots, but I haven't put the rings on yet. So I put the boots on first, slide the piston in. I push it down a fair way, and then I'll push the boot on the seat all the way around. Just like it's seated. Do the same with the last one. Make sure the boot is seated. Then I'll go with these rings. I don't know, circular pliers are going to do it. We'll see how we go, eh? I'll let you know. Well, that went on pretty easy. I'll just, by hand mostly, and just a little flat blade screwdriver, just finish it off. Do the rest now. All back together now. These little split rings all down the bottom. go mount it back up on the cruiser now, and don't need to show you that.